Well, Amy, welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I really love your work and your unapologetic take on the science community. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to write about science and to be known as the advice goddess?
I actually am no longer known that way, and it's actually a name I hated. I picked it at a moment's notice, and I was really sorry. And then I changed it to the science advice goddess, which didn't help. But this all started this is my accidental career. I thought I would write probably TV or movies. And I was living in New York and I'm from the Midwest. You know, your parents don't send you to grad school for film. We're going to pay you to watch movies, like a lot of money. I thought that was hilarious. And I got a job in advertising for commercials. And this was Ogilvy and Mather, and it was in the 80s. Really fun. It was the heyday of advertising. And I had two friends, and we would do these madcap things. And one of the things we decided to do was, like Lucy from Peanuts, have the advice 5-cent stand on a Soho street corner. Only we thought nobody's going to give us a nickel, so we'll just make it free. So we have this sign, free advice from a panel of experts presented by the advice ladies, and all these topics listed like wigs and beards, proper spelling. I mean, I didn't even take psychology in grad school in college, so it wasn't like we had special knowledge. And we thought people would walk past us. We'd be a visual joke, and they'd just walk past and laugh. We'd laugh, all's good. You know, New York, the sign said free. They lined up around the block. And people would ask us the silly questions on our sign, but they also would ask us serious questions. And I felt really irresponsible because what did I know? But I've always been this crazy reader, and I just voracious. And so I read through all of psychology, and I was shocked that Freud was just this huge charlatan. He just made all this stuff up. It's ridiculous. And I discovered the work of Albert Ellis, which really dovetailed with my the foundation of me, which is being rational and thinking critically and being a skeptic. And Albert Ellis founded one arm of cognitive behavioral therapy, but his is called rational. And he was very influenced by Epictetus, who was one of the Stoics, who said, basically paraphrasing, it is not events that disturb us, we take of them. And Ellis would say you're disturbing rationally. And so this was where I started getting into science. First, I had reasoning in my column. Sorry, I skipped ahead a little bit. So the advice ladies, we're just doing this on Saturdays. We do it, and it's really fun, and it's rewarding. People are really helped by us somehow. And so when we become a thing, this guy Eric Messenger writes a story about us for the New York Times for the style section. Now there's photos and stuff. Everything gets cut. It's like a 2-paragraph article. But being this enterprising person from Michigan and wanting to get ahead, I run with this, and I get us a deal with De Niro, a book deal, a column in the New York Daily News. And we were doing all this stuff. And then one of my partners, she had a drug problem, and we split up, and I took over the column. And what I didn't know was that Albert Ellis, who I was a fan of his work, I'd read all his books. I have one right here somewhere because they're just endlessly useful. He was a fan of my column because it was so reason-based. And so he became something of a mentor. And I was all worried about credentials, thought I'd go to college, for grad school and get some kind of degree. And he said, don't do that. It'd be a waste of time. You know what you need to know. And the truth was, I'm more science-based than Ellis ever was. And so I didn't know what I needed to know. And I felt an increasing responsibility. Actually, I felt like there was a huge hole. I thought, I need to have a column where I give advice. It needs to not just be rational, but evidence-based. And so that's when I began learning behavioral science, going to these conferences, showing up. People were very nice to me, especially in the evolutionary psychology world, where I'm, even though I'm not an academic, that's my area of expertise. And so I'm doing this. And then what happens is, around 2007, a science writer friend invites me to dinner with this guy, Sander Greenland, who is one of the top biostatisticians and methodological reformers in the world. He's the co-author of the seminal textbook in epidemiology, modern epidemiology, and he's also really generous. And so I was very worried about, how would I evaluate the science properly? Behavioral science, you still, it's not complicated. It's not as weighty as medical science, because if I interpret that wrong, you could die. And if I interpret the psychology studies wrong, or don't notice, there's something missing, or whatever the problem is, okay, maybe you go on a bad date. And so Sander started to coach me over the years on how to vet. This is really important. And then he also started sending me articles and papers about medical fraud and error and abuse. And so I became better and better through scoldings, meetings. Those are metaphorical, actually, with his looking at my column, and we'd talk and everything. And so what happened was, this was like 2016, 2017. I forgot to say, I syndicated, I'm like going backwards. I syndicated my column that was in the Daily News. Sorry, I think I'm out of focus again. Sorry. And then to a whole bunch of papers, and I was doing very well. And then I get this hot flash, and what you want to do is to say, oh my God, I'm so uncomfortable. I'm going to go to the doctor and say, what should I do? But I knew better from Sander. So what I do is I dive into the research, and I look at the research as compared with the practice standards. And there is this vast, I'm deeply upset. And so I understand what I need. This was perimenopause that I was in. This hot flash it came during the transition years to menopause, 3 to 10 years when you're quite uncomfortable if you're a lot of women. And then and people don't know as much about it. There's more knowledge about it now, but I figured out that what I needed was oral micronized progesterone, and not estrogen. This is to make up for what's missing, basically what goes missing in perimenopause, which is the progesterone that's made when you ovulate. It's made from the egg, the sac that ruptures with the egg in it. That litter from the ruptured sac, it's yellow and waxy. It's called the corpus luteum, and that's progesterone for the second half of your cycle. But if you don't ovulate, which happens in perimenopause, and women have these periods that seem normal and as disturbing and yucky as the rest of them, you don't make progesterone, and this can cause you all sorts of problems. For example, if you have a really bad perimenopause, as I did, I really like nice. I'm kind if you're not making noise in front of my house at 3 a.m. And I became this just rage-filled bitch. And I didn't act it out, but I wanted to. Someone's in the hardware store line, some nice man. You can see he's nice, probably got grandkids. He's humming. I want to smother him with it. I want to murder this man because everything bothers you. And then you have the hot flashes, and there are other symptoms like nausea, sleeplessness, and then you have brain fog because of that. So I see that oral micronized progesterone is the thing that will help me. And I go to my medical provider, Kaiser Permanente, big HMO, and I asked my gynecologist, who's really a terrific guy, can you please prescribe me Prometrium? That's the brand drug for the oral micronized progesterone, but in generic form. And that's what Kaiser does. And I support that so more people can afford medical care. And I'm very explicit about which drug I want and everything. And he puts the prescription through. She's sure, yes. And I justified why I wanted it. I explained it to him. And then I check my prescription just to be careful. And I see that actually, I got there. And it was medroxyprogesterone acetate, which is the synthetic knockoff of progesterone, which has very negative effects on your cardiovascular system, your brain, your breasts. It can increase your breast cancer risk, binds with the wrong receptor in the breast, the glucocorticoid stress receptor in the breast. And so you don't want to take this if there's this slightly more expensive drug that is same as progesterone in your body, but FDA approved. That's very important. And so I end up fighting 3 battles with Kaiser to get the drug, to get it covered, and to get the amount they take in France, which is 300 milligrams. Now, in America, they give people 100 and 200. Why? Particular reason. They haven't compared the effectiveness of these different doses here. Now, there's starting to be more research on this, but there wasn't then. And the dose in France is important because we don't know how we metabolize steroids. Are we rapid metabolizers, or do we which means you clear them quickly, or do they stick around in large quantities? And so that's why 300 milligrams is important, because it protects your endometrium, your uterine lining, from becoming, it's called hyperplasia, from estrogen driven overgrowth, which can become cancerous. And progesterone is also very important because what it does in breasts is it takes these delinquent cells, these cells that are just generic cells, and it differentiates them. It causes them to mature into breast cells. So basically, you've given them a job. So they can't be delinquents and then just double into cancer. So progesterone is really and important to take. And medroxyprogesterone acetate, the drug on Kaiser's formulary, you don't want. So I was quite lucky because my doctor he's such a good guy, my gynecologist. And then I basically snowstormed with all these papers on progesterone and, from France, it dose everything. And so he brings in his boss, and I forgot, I had to pitch to a panel to tell them why I needed this drug that wasn't on their formulary. I needed it covered because, it was quite expensive and things were getting hard for those of us who write for newspapers. And so I had this medical plan. It's supposed to cover drugs. And when you only get the drug that can increase your cancer risk and cause all these problems, that's not okay. So the panel, I do this whole thing, with all the details and the studies and citations and this packet. And I finished the meeting, and then what's the answer? No, declined. And so what I learned was there was not even a gynecologist or an endocrinologist on the panel. They knew nothing about what I was talking about, no background. And all they did was call some gynecologist and say, what's Kaiser's standard of care? Well, fantastic. That's really terrible. So these panels are basically for people to go cry and feel heard and then be denied by people who are uninformed, ignorant in the area you're talking about, and don't listen to the science. They assume you're some dummy who Googled or something, and not somebody who brings like the armloads of science. And so what happened was I do mediation, and I use that to help my homeless clients to get bureaucrats to behave themselves and waive DMV paperwork and give them, fix the toll fees and everything. And so I used that on my poor doctor and his boss. And so they kept saying no. But then she had agreed, his boss, very fair. She's the head of gynecology then, not anymore. She's big way in the hospital now. She agreed to meet. And so I, again, snowstormed them with all this research. And I said, wait, you're not, because I was sleeping. I hadn't been sleeping. One of the horrible symptoms for some of us is not sleeping, really having terrible insomnia. And I had all my life. It was like someone clocked me with a large frying pan. Nighttime, put my head on the pillow, 6 a.m, I wake up, beautiful sleep. And instead, I was having like a toast in a psychotic toaster, up, down, like 5 or 6 times a night. And it's really terrible because what happens is you don't get the clearance. There's a system called the glymphatic system in the brain. This is researched by Megan Neragard, this cool neuroscientist, where she and her colleagues found that your brain is too big in your skull to get cleaned out during the day. And only at night when your brain shrinks through decent sleep is it small enough that the cerebrospinal fluid can wash through and get rid of the Taco Bell cups and whatever else you've got in there, like the backseat of a teenager's car. So anyway, where was I in all of this? I got the progesterone by them, which was really wonderful. And I said, look, I assume any risk, knowing that I didn't have risk, that I was doing the smartest thing, the most protective things for my bones, for my heart, for my cardiovascular system. And then I asked this question. So you'll give this progesterone, this will be on your formulary. You'll give it to other patients, right? Naive. Were you born yesterday, Amy? Apparently so. And so I was so angry at this. All these women being put at risk. And they could have a panel read the science, an actually expert panel read the science that I presented and to verify it. But no, they denied it to women. And I was so angry that I wrote this book. Here's my book. And it is a book born of outrage and a lot of really black coffee, Going Menopostal, which describes both the anger that I had and that women should have at the betrayal of all women who are seeking care in this area, and actually in other areas of medicine, all of us, where we're not given evidence-based, and we deserve that. And we're also not given care from people with any expertise in menopause and perimenopause. This is the untold scandal, the secret of gynecology departments that I bring out in the book, that most of the doctors are what I call baby doctors. They're maternity specialists and reproductive specialists, no training, no expertise in treating menopausal women, but they're made to do it anyway. Business as usual. Here, see her. And then there are practice standards they can go by, lists of here's what you do in this case. But that's not the same as knowing the science, and they're often evidence-based. So this is really, really terrible, and it's actually a violation of medical ethics. This is malpractice as usual, where they expect gynecologists to treat women when they have no expertise in the problems that women are bringing in, and it's just what goes on, and it's not disclosed to the women. No, that's not ethical. I quote this woman, I think her name is Sarah Hull, who's a cardiologist, who says, her patients will sometimes say, hey, would you prescribe me some more allergy medicine? And she says, I'm really sorry, I can't. I need to send you back to your allergist or the primary care doctor who provided it, because I don't know this area or this science, and I could prescribe the wrong drug for you. And so it's what's medically responsible, medically ethical. And this is some of the stuff that just fueled me writing this book, because I was just so mad. It's just so contrary to what we believe about medicine. That's the biggest, the big shocker of this book, is and writing this book in this process was seeing how little evidence, how little training in various areas like diagnostic reasoning and risk analysis goes into medical education. And those medical schools and medical institutions are ultimately the ones responsible for turning out doctors who are scientifically and statistically illiterate and basically need to go by practice standards in order to treat you in many cases. Not all doctors are like this, but doctors don't have time to do what I do, which is I'm a nerd. I sit in this chair, all day and all night, obsessing, reading research. They have all these electronic medical record keeping requirements, and they see patients at Kaiser, chop, 20 minutes. And people want lives. I'm okay without one to a degree, but people go home to families or they go on dates, and that's to be expected. So you can't expect doctors to, stay at work and read studies into the evening. And then there's the problem of doctors not being trained to read studies, how to read them, how to evaluate them. And this is some of what we don't understand. There are these myths of medicine that we need to really disabuse ourselves of to be able to protect ourselves.